Welcome, Mr. Casey.
All right, welcome everyone to the Monday, December 7th, 2020 City Council Workshop. This is the 22nd City Council meeting held via online conferencing application. All City Council members and the meeting will continue as long as there is a quorum. Please allow one person to speak at a time. I will call on every member to make sure you have had an opportunity to ask any questions. I will now ask our City Clerk Renteria to start the roll call.
Mayor Guerrero.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
Here.
Councilor Farmer.
Here.
Councilor Henry.
Here.
Councilor Raciti.
Here.
Councilor Hicks.
Here.
Councilor Broersma.
I'm here.
City Manager Casey.
Here.
City Clerk Renteria, I am here. Finance Director Alba.
Excused.
Fire Chief Anderson.
I'm here.
Police Chief Escalera.
I'm here.
Public Works Director Fisher.
Here.
All right, looks like everyone is here tonight, so we'll move right into our active agenda. And we have on our first topic, Planning Department Update. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. It's my pleasure to introduce Mike Shuttleworth this evening. He's been on board just 6 months now as our planning supervisor, and there's been quite a bit of activity in the department and under his leadership, as well as coming in during the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, where a lot of our business processes and our interaction with our customers have had to be adjusted and revised in order to provide health and safety considerations. We thought this would be a good opportunity to give you an update on his first 6 months, as well as what he forecasts in the year ahead as some of the main activities that the Planning Community Development Group will be working on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike to lead you through the presentation. And I believe he was going to ask Clerk Renteria to assist with advancing the slides for him.
Thank you, City Manager Casey. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, good evening, and thank you for letting me present information about the Office of Planning and Community Development. This group is made up of planning, building, permit processing, and code enforcement. This group works with other city departments to provide for development within the city of Sunnyside, and I'm going to provide you information about each section. So the first one is the planning department. Our major emphasis is working on updating the comprehensive plan. Hopefully we'll have some draft for you in the middle part of next year. A lot of that depending on the whole covert issue and how that fares out. Coming up in the December Planning Commission meeting, we'll be conducting a public hearing on the communication draft ordinance to address those 5G facilities that we are now looking at coming in. Probably in early January, we'll probably see a couple annexations. There's 3 of them that have been out there for a while. One of them we just recently applied to the Boundary Review Board and found out that part of Yakima Valley Highway that we show within the city is actually not within the city. It's still in the county. So we need to amend that and come back to the City Council with an amended ordinance or amended resolution talking about adding that portion of the Yakima Valley Highway. We are working on the permit review process, and that's kind of tied in with that software we recently purchased. That software is going to do many things, and the first is looking at all the applications, specifically first the planning applications, to try to make them all consistent and make them a lot easier to fill out. Moving on to the building department. You want to move the slide there, Jackie? The year 2020 has been kind of interesting with hurdles to climb. I do want to note in the picture you see on the slide that we have done some remodeling of the front space here and basically turned the counter 90 degrees and made it longer and put in some sort of walls. What's not in this picture is additional glass across the middle of that, between those partitions to help when we do reopens. If we have some issues where we still have to have separation, we'll have those in there. One of the biggest things we're looking at, like I said, is bringing on the new permit processing software. One of the things that will help us do is allow people to make applications online, something they don't currently do. Also, it'll help them find out where their application is in the permit processes just by going online and using their number, which will help with us moving forward with applications and not having to always answer questions that people can check in the middle of the night if they want, or late in the evening, and they'll always know where their application is and where it's at in the process. Just one thing to note, in February, we will be updating our building codes to the 2018 codes, and that is by requirements of the state of Washington. They have a building code council, and they specify what dates we should have certain codes adopted, and trying to make everyone using the same consistent code. So we will be doing that. Can people still hear me? I got a error code that I was muted.
You are good.
Okay, thank you. Now I have to remember what. So next.
There is,
slide.
oh, Mr. Shuttleworth, just
Yes.
FYI, there is an unmuted iPhone that periodically was interfering
Oh, okay.
with some of your comments, but I think most of what you said came through clear for us.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Jackie, you want to go to the next slide? Okay, this slide is pretty much related to the permit technician, and what she is doing is working on integrating the new software into the permit processing. And as part of that process, as you can see, she's updating the applications. One of the reasons to update the applications is when we go online and allow people to make application over the internet, we are only limited to a certain amount of applications. So we're trying to make them a generic application. So one application will have, if they're applying for a building permit, it'll have most of the information on it that somebody will need for a building permit. And they won't have to go through a bunch of different applications when they're trying to fill out the information. The new permit software, one of the things that we are really excited about, it will help us coordinate with other departments. And the way that it will do that is by making notices to those departments. So when we do get an application in, we put it in the file, and then we put a note out to them. So in the morning when they log in the application, they say they've got 4 applications to review and what those reviews are. And also helps us put notes on there. So as we're going through the process and code enforcement has an issue with a particular permit, whenever somebody opens that permit to look at it, it'll be a note up there saying, whatever the issue is, or if fees aren't paid, or there's certain inspections that need to be done prior to a final inspection, then we can put that up there and everybody will know what's going on with the permit. And I think it'll help in the long run as we look at permits and how we evaluate those, and everybody can be on the same page. Next one, Jackie. Council has many objectives for this program, code enforcement. We've been pursuing a hybrid approach that is responding to community interests for more rapid compliance on property and building and vehicle codes and business license, and still support law enforcement in addressing criminal activities contributing to code compliance and chronic nuisance. I know that right at this point, the code enforcement is responding to a lot of issues related to graffiti. Evidently, we have a lot of activity in that right now. As you know, code enforcement's been returned to the planning and building department for supervision and training, and I think that's working out good. One of the things with the new software, you can go to the next slide, Jackie, please, is that the new software also has a code enforcement function in there, so that people can make complaints online over the internet. So that will go directly to David, and a case file will be created. And as part of that case file, as you can see, there's quite a bit of information included in there. So we know every time that he's made contact with that person, basically how long he's made that contact and what the results are. So it's more responsive when people have questions about code enforcement issues. Next one. New activity. I know there were some questions when I came on about activity and development in Sunnyside. I'm actually happy to say we've got quite a bit of new development coming online. We're just starting to see some of it. One of them was a development by Dr. Martin, fairly large lots, view lots. So those are going to be a fairly good income level for those lots. Then we have Catholic Charities that are building some lots, and those are more starter homes and move-up homes. We do have a large mobile home park going in. All these things are making possible for housing for all income levels, and I think that's what we strive for in Sunnyside, is that there's a lot or a house or a facility for every income level. So no matter who you are, you can move into Sunnyside, and I think that will help us in our growth. We are trying so that hopefully in 2021 we'll be ready for that growth. You know, I was hoping for in 2020, but always things change as activities change and issues come up. Okay, excuse me. So the goal for 2021, everywhere I've worked, we've always tried to work at a process to get permits reviewed and issued in 2 weeks. A lot of times it's hard to do. One of the issues that we look at is here is basically a lot of our code and our plan review is contracted out to different organizations. So we're kind of at their mercy. I would like to look at our staffing level in probably 2021 or 2022 and see if we can get plan review more in-house, and also provide for backup for our building inspector. We have one. When he goes on vacation, then we have to work around. You get other people to help, which slows other things down. I'm excited about the software, permit software, because one of the things that does help, and one of the goals is coordinating with Public Works, Fire Department, other departments that review our applications. By using this software, we can keep them informed of what's going on and what's going on. So as they work on their particular jobs, they can also look at the permits and know, you know, we see a lot of permits coming in. They may have to make some adjustments to help review those, or we need to find some other way to get them reviewed. With this new software also, the contractors, property owners will be able to look online and see where their permits are at. One thing that'll help for like contractors when they're making decisions about when to hire staff to come in and do certain things, they have an idea that, oh, the permit's almost ready to issue, then I can move forward and start planning for that process. And then the big thing for 2021 is completing the comprehensive plan so that we provide further directions for the city as we move forward. And also that helps us to look at our regulations. Some of them haven't been updated in a while, not that they have to be, but usually you need to review all your regulations to make sure they're consistent with changes in state law and changes in court decisions and changes in the way the city is being operated. So that is my presentation. Sorry for going so quickly, but any questions of council?
Thank you, Mr. Shuttleworth. We'll go ahead and go down our list of council members, see if we got any questions for you. Okay, we'll start with Councilor Henry.
No questions. I just want to say thank you for your work.
Councilor Bergman.
I have no questions at this time, sir.
Deputy Mayor Stremler.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Councilor Restucci.
I have one question, Mike. Where are we at with the comprehensive plan update?
I've been putting a lot of time into it right now and updating all the information in it. Hopefully come January, the Planning Commission will spend quite a bit of time on those updates. It's just taking a little bit more time than I expected, and some of the information, as I start going one direction, I think, well, I better change. One of the things I've run into recently is just the information I'm getting on transportation, where technology, I think in the next 10 and 20 years is going to be playing a big role in transportation, and we need to kind of address that. So I'm looking at how the city of Sunnyside could address that, you know, such as our electric charging stations and other things.
Glad to hear that. And you're absolutely correct. We're going to see a lot more in the way of technology and roadside units and all kinds of different types of solutions as we move into the future. That's one of the reasons, or one of the things that my committee, the Autonomous Work Group for the state, is working on. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that we're moving forward with this tracking software solution. My question isn't to you, Mr. Shuttleworth, but to the city manager. Is this a tracking software solution going to be available to all departments?
So this particular application that's the iWork application that council approved earlier this year as a remote tool to allow use of or access for planning and permitting processes. It is specific and designed specific for planning and permitting type functions to include code enforcement. There are other software applications out there that provide that may provide tracking for other business processes, but this one is pretty specific to the business processes of issuing permits and going through the planning process. The other departments, as Mike mentioned, of Public Works and Fire, who have input and have sign-offs on certain kinds of building permits, depending on what's involved, they will have access to be able to do that process more seamlessly. But I don't think it currently is expandable or scalable beyond that function. But we can continue looking at those applications as our opportunities arise.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I would like to make sure that when we are looking at these type of solutions, that if there is an enterprise-wide solution, that we look at that as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hicks?
No questions at this time.
Okay, Councilor Farmer? Did we lose Councilor Farmer? I'm not sure if I see him on our list.
He is on the call. It looks like his phone symbol is muted at the moment.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll ask a question while see if he's able to get it muted. But the Shuttleworth, you did mention about code enforcement tracking. Is that something similar to what we do online? We submit the request, and then at that point, basically now you don't really get a follow-up. So through this software, is it somebody calls in or somebody submits a complaint about graffiti or a pothole? Will that submission get updated once it's resolved?
It'll get updated in the software. I don't know, and I'm not sure the software will notify the person who called in the complaint, but we can set a process up so that it can do that. The nice thing about the code enforcement software is no matter who calls in and asks about it, we can go in and look at it and say, well, he's sent a letter or he's done whatever he's done, then we can let them know without them having to officially talk to the code enforcement officer.
Yeah, because if that's the case, that would be ideal. Because I know in the past, at least personally, I've submitted a couple of requests, and I'm not sure if it got taken care of or not. Because usually you drive by and nothing has changed, and I'm sure there's been multiple letters sent over to the bank or the property owner, and it's just a matter of maybe them acting on it. But from the perspective of the person submitting the request, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of progress. So if there's a way for even citizens who submit a request to see what the status is, at that point I think it will be very helpful. It might even minimize the number of phone calls that code enforcement department might get regarding an update on something that they submitted a request on.
Okay, I will check into that. I'm not, like I say, I'm not sure the software will do that, but we can set up a process to do that.
All right, thank you. That's the only question I had, and we'll go back to Councilor Farmer, see if he's able to unmute his phone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay. I apologize for that. Just a comment. I think that anything that we can do technology-wise to help our contractors and to help our citizens move forward with improving and expanding in Sunnyside is a great thing. And I appreciate the move to this software to where we can be more business friendly. Thank you.
Okay, so we had an opportunity to get everyone an opportunity to answer questions. So thank you very much for that the update. I think it's very comprehensive and it gives us a picture of what to expect in 2021. And like my fellow council members said, it sounds like there's a lot of good bells and whistles in the software that we're going to be able to utilize and put to practice next year. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next agenda item is going to be Animal Control Services update. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, council's aware of some of the history here, but I'll just cover it briefly. We're currently wrapping up a 3-year contract for animal control services with the Yakima Humane Society. Council had selected an option back in 2017 or 18 for 20 hours of service each week. And I think also the animal control officers here at least one day every other weekend. They set pricing for that, and we've been functioning under that contract since. In addition to control of loose or dangerous dogs, which are regulated by city ordinance, the Humane Society will also respond to calls to remove deceased animals, squirrels, dogs, what have you, on city streets. For 2021, we reached out to the Humane Society again for quotes for differing levels of service. Initially, we were provided 2 quotes, and I do have an update tonight on a third option. As under the existing contract, the 2 quotes we received initially were for a similar level of coverage, loose and dangerous dogs, picking up deceased animals, and so forth. At 20 hours a week, they quoted us an annual rate of $40,800, which is actually just a hair under this year's contract price and is within current plan preliminary 21 budget. And they also quoted us an increased level of coverage to have the animal control officer here 40 hours a week at a cost of $66,000, or approximately $25,000 more than is currently budgeted. As we were putting the materials together last week, I had noted in the packet that not yet seen a quote for control of feral cats, which was an additional level of service we asked them to take a look at. Some of the challenges in coming to us with a quote on that was that they do not and could not find a partner able to shelter these animals, and we're trying to figure out a method or a means for doing essentially a trap and release program. The chief did forward me some information over the weekend. So kind of pulling from that, YHS, the Humane Society, discussed having a trap and release program for feral cats. The animal control officer would respond to a report of feral cat. The ACO would trap and transport the cat to be spayed and neutered at the Humane Society's clinic, and then must return that cat to the site from which it was captured. They don't have any capacity to house the cat, and the rules and laws that govern animal trapping and animal control require them essentially to return it back to the site from which it was captured. The charge that they would apply to the city for trap and release program would be $30 for 1 cat, which includes $20 fee for the spaying and neutering, and then $10 as a charge to cover mileage, basically for trapping the cat, transporting it both ways, and then the paperwork for documenting the activity. They did offer a discount if more than 1 cat is captured at a single location. The charge to the city would be $30 for the first animal and then $20 for each animal thereafter. We do not have an estimate. They don't have an estimate of the number of cats that might be trapped, spayed, neutered, and returned over the course of a year. So we don't really have a good figure as to what the total cost of this level of service would be. But just to kind of quickly do the math for council, if they did 100 individual cats at $30 a pop, we're talking $3,000. And that's the information we had. We had just wanted to get that question back to council since that had been raised earlier this year. We are close to finalizing the budget process, so if council were interested in setting a different level of service, as council as a whole, we'd certainly be open to entertaining that discussion. Just kind of wanted to make sure to get you this update.
Thank you, Mr. Casey.
Questions?
Okay, we'll go down our list of council members. Councilor Farmer.
Thank you. I've looked over the contract, and maybe I missed it, but what do we have for cancellation of the contract and opting out of the contract if we wish to do so? It looks to me like you do it before August 31st. Well, the year's almost over with by then.
Correct. And I think that's maybe similar. It's fairly standard to have some form of cancellation either upon a period of notice to like 30, 60, or 90 days. In this case, they're asking that the cancellation notification be done at least 4 months before the end of the current term.
Okay, so if we signed the contract with them in January and we decided we wanted to get out of the contract, we would give them 4 months notice. Is that correct then?
Well, no, it would renew automatically at the end of the first year unless we give notice by August 31st. So that'd be the 4 months.
So this is going to be an annual contract no matter what. We're in it for 12 months no matter what.
That's how it's currently drafted, yes.
Okay.
Or it can be terminated for cause.
Okay, I have an issue there. Another thing, and let me back up. I understand why they might want to do it that way because they've got to commit to a guy here. So the other thing is you reference their employee as our officer. When I think of our officer, I think of we've hired the man. I don't like that particular verbiage either.
Can you point me where? I'm not familiar with where it references our officer.
I can get that to you, but it's in the stuff several different places. Our officer.
And they may be referencing that simply in terms of it being assigned to the city or assigned as the city's officer. But if there's concern that appears to create an employment relationship or something like that, that might be something we can clarify with them.
I think that needs to be clarified because you definitely say our officer. Okay. So that I would think that would be our employee. The next thing I have is I know when I hire an employee, I give him a job to do, and he pretty much has to do what I want during the day. I have some problem if we have to pay extra to pay him to trap cats while he's already here and to transport feral cats when he's coming and going. I have no problem with paying to have him spayed and neutered, but I have a little problem with having to pay extra because he's already down here, and when he's down here, he is working for us. So I would object to that, and then also for the transportation of the feral cat to and from, unless he makes a special trip down here, which I don't see any reason for him to do. And those would be my comments right now.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Strimler.
I have a question. In a discussion quite a while back on animal control, and I don't remember exactly how it went, but it seemed to me that it could happen during the day that they would go back to Yakima if they had 1, 2, or 3 dogs, and I'm not sure maybe they did it on every dog. I don't really think so, but it sounded like they would transport a dog to Yakima and then come back again, and all that is the clock is running. And I guess I question that, or how many times are we going to be running back and forth to Yakima that we're paying for? Because I know they got quite a few cages on the truck, but it seems to me the discussion before was that they would take a dog to Yakima, we would have to pay for him to go to Yakima and then come back again. It'd be, and I could be wrong, but just that, I guess I want to make sure we aren't hauling dogs to Yakima 2 or 3 times during the day, versus maybe you have to do it once a day, possibly, like at noon, possibly. But I can't really see that happening either. But it's such that I kind of gather that they do. I would like clarification on that if possible.
Okay. Chief Escalera, do you have any information on that? I'm not familiar with that.
A little bit insight. The Humane Society tries to minimize the amount of times that they travel to and from Yakima, and so they do wait till they have a number of animals to transport up, and they try to get that done once a day. And sometimes there's a holdover where we have to hold them overnight, and then they come in and pick them up the next day. However, if the dog is injured, if we have an injured animal, one that's in need of medical attention or otherwise, that's done immediately. It's not something that's held. So they have, there are reasons for them to really expand beyond once a day, but I don't know that happens that often. It seems like they're pretty good about planning out the day as to how many times they're going to make that trip to and from.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hicks.
Yeah, the only thing I see on that is I can see in extreme conditions like over 100 degrees or freezing temperatures, you'd make more trips for the sole fact that the animals would be suffering in the back of the truck. But other than that, no other questions.
Okay, Councillor Henry.
No questions, thank you.
Councillor Bergman.
Well, I guess I would say that I do concur a little bit with what Mr. Farmer was talking about. Somebody who is mentioned as our employee is somebody that we hired and that we are paying and that we have to take care of. Somebody who is a contract employee through the Humane Society to come and work in Sunnyside is not our employee, and I think that needs to be clarified in the contract. Then also, I do have a problem with the extra charges. If he's already in town and is catching dogs and happens to catch a cat, I don't quite understand why there's an extra charge for that. He is an animal control officer, not a dog catcher. So I don't see where there's why they should differentiate on that if he's already in town doing his job. That's all I've got.
Mr. Mayor, if I can point to Section 1J to answer Councilor Boersma's question. Section 1J provides the animal control officer, the Humane Society shall provide 1 FTE or 1/2 FTE animal control officer to perform the duties set forth in Section 2. Such animal control officer shall be deemed for all purposes to be an employee of the Humane Society and not an employee of the city. But we will continue looking if there's any, for the examples of instances where the contract or the Humane Society refers to the control officer as kind of our officer, just to make sure that there's no ambiguity.
Okay. Councillor Restucci.
No questions or comments, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and I don't have no questions or comments either, Mr. City Manager. So any additional questions from council members?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman Farmer. I do have one more comment. Depending on how many hours we contract the Humane Society for, we still have several hours in the city where we have no animal control officer. I think that we need to appoint somebody or charge somebody in the city to be a go-to person for animal control problems when the Humane Society is not down here. I think going from 20 to 40 hours a week, that does not solve the problem of us being without an animal control officer. I think that needs to be kind of figured in here in the budget as to how we're going to handle that particular time when we do not have an animal control officer in town.
And I know in the past we addressed having them come in on weekends every now and then, just to make sure that we catch those weekend when kids are home and the dog might get out and it doesn't come back for a couple hours. So I know we did address that a couple of years ago, where we did request them to include some weekend hours. So yeah, I mean, we have 24 hours a day. They're scheduled 20 hours a week, so we'll never have somebody 24/7 on call to deal with dogs. But if there's a problem dog that continues to get out constantly, then I think we could definitely guide our animal control officer to that location to keep an eye on that section of town, because obviously it seems to be an ongoing problem. But yeah, I agree. It's going to be impossible for us to cover 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, animal control. But if there is problem areas, then I think that's going to be our focus, to be able to try to have the animal control person be in the lookout for that neighborhood and that dog or that specific part of town that we see more problems arising.
Mr. Mayor, that's not an answer to my problem. My problem is when the animal control officer isn't down here, who is responsible? That is the question. I know we're not going to have an animal control officer come down out of Yakima for 24/7. I know that, but when he is not here, we should have somebody made responsible in the city to handle that problem.
And I really don't think we can do that unless we have our own 24/7 animal control officer who's on call for us, because at the end of the day, we are only open, even City Hall's open 8 to 5 basically. So I really don't think we can have somebody here unless we assign a police officer, which is not obviously trained to handle animals, and that's not their job either. So I think, point well taken, but I don't think there's a solution for your problem at this point.
The solution would be is if we got to call somebody, and it would have to be more or less an emergency kind of thing. We're going to have to call somebody, and I realize whoever we choose is going to have training and is going to have equipment. I understand this totally, but I do think this is something we need to move towards. Whether it's a police officer, whether it's code enforcement officer, fire department, I don't know, but there should be somebody that we can call that will take care of this kind of a problem when animal control is not here.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, many of the officers or individuals that work for the city are not necessarily any closer, if put on call, if that were done, than the animal control officers. And there is a mechanism in the current contract and in the proposed contract in Section 3 for the Humane Society to provide standby coverage. And they publish their after hours number, and in an emergency, they will respond to an incident here I see Jackie scrolling, sorry. Now they, of course, would charge the city for that, but they have the training, they have the equipment, they have the facilities and so forth. But that is a mechanism that the Humane Society does offer in the contract. It is not the same as someone who physically lived in the heart of Sunnyside responding in 20 or 30 minutes upon getting a call. You're going to add about a half an hour to that response time if they're having to drive down at 2 in the morning on a weeknight or on a Saturday when they weren't already scheduled to be here. But it is a mechanism that is at least partly addressed in the proposed contract and in the current one.
And it sounds like that's something that will be definitely useful for maybe a dangerous animal or something that would obviously put somebody at harm. That would sound like that mechanism would definitely come in handy. But we're talking about Chihuahuas, who's in somebody's backyard. That just doesn't make sense for us to have somebody drive from Yakima to catch that small animal. So, but yeah, okay. So it sounds like there's something in the contract that would address some of that. Just I guess maybe us looking at it more details and find out what options we have, because I wasn't aware of that option in there. So thanks for clarifying that.
Mr. Mayor, I have talked to people who have claimed to have called the animal control people, and they've been told, tough luck, we don't have anybody that can come down. So that's why I'm wanting somebody from the city that a citizen can call and expect some kind of resolution to a problem. That's all I want.
Mr. City Manager, is there a way for somebody not to use our official line from the city to call and test that line to see if they actually are able to come out and under that section 3 that you talked about, what kind of response we get? Because if they're getting a response that, tough luck, then obviously what's the point of having it in the contract?
I'll ask the chief to follow up on that. And looking at some of the data, they have provided us a summary of the number of calls. I'm not aware of how many denials that they've done, but we can ask them for if they track that and for that information. I would point out our own police dispatch sometimes have to prioritize, and depending on the number of officers or staff available, we'll ask people to either wait or may not be able to dispatch an officer immediately. But we can find out from the Humane Society if they have records of how often they have essentially denied an emergency call, if at all.
Okay. And even Councilor Farmer, if you feel like you want to give them a call and see, firsthand account of what you get back, and then let us know, obviously could definitely, put that to good use as well. So that's an option as well.
Well, I would be happy to make that phone call, but and sometimes they do respond, and sometimes they say tough luck. So I could call and they might respond. It's the times that they don't respond, and who knows when that's going to happen. And there also has to be some kind of procedure or merits where they should have to come down, or if it's just a chihuahua running across the street, well, no, I don't expect them to come down for that. But we have to have protocol for this, and we don't. Or if we do, I don't know about it.
Okay, all right, we'll move on to our next agenda items. I think we covered this one enough. So next one is a 2021 budget proposal update. Mr. City Manager.
I'm letting Jackie catch up there. All right, thank you. All right, this evening we are presenting kind of adjusted preliminary budget proposals. These reflect the 2020 third quarter budget amendments that Council adopted recently. I want to acknowledge again the hard work of staff on this, including Finance Supervisor Delilah Sines, our HR Assistant Victoria Hernandez, Public Works Director Fisher, and others that in the leadership team that have been reviewing this and kind of bringing everything into balance, making sure everything stays in balance as we go forward. Let's go on to the next slide. Oop. So there we go. Thank you. I'll cover pretty quickly the information. Some of this you've seen in previous presentations. These are the various some of the various planning assumptions that go into building a budget each year. There we go. Oh, that's a little cleaner. Thank you, Jackie. Everything from the different funds and the structures of them. Some are dedicated, some are more open-ended and more flexible in how we get revenue and can spend from those. We've talked about economic factors. We've talked about financial discipline and the efforts to address or respond to audit concerns where those have arisen in the past, and trying to build a prudent fund balance. The auditor's kind of benchmark is to reach a 60-day reserve target, which for us would be just under $2 million in the general fund alone. And of course, this year, the tremendous impacts, continuing impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects on economy and so we'll go on to the next slide. We talked about and just kind of reminded folks on council's previous guidance on this and some of the priorities it has set in the past. And then most specifically, this presentation reflects the 2020 third quarter budget amendment. So by making adjustments in 2020, that ripples forward into the 2021 preliminary budget, because as we refine our understanding and hone in our estimates for the ending fund balances that we'll have at the end of this fiscal year, those become the foundation, the building blocks for building next year's budget. So with the third quarter budget amendment that reflected the summer's impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic on both revenues and spending, we now have a more precise understanding and forecast for the 2021 budget. As council will recall, when we brought that amendment forward last month, we were seeing less revenue in our jail and recreation programs, but strength and even some increased revenue in sales and utility taxes. We had some expenses increase as a result of having to respond to COVID-19 and to provide everything from physical reconfigurations in order to assure physical distancing and barriers between customer-facing functions and the public, to the personal protective equipment, and to the software applications that we were discussing earlier. Many of those expenses were one-time expenses that are going to be reimbursed through the CARES Act, but we saw that in a variety of funds. The net effects were fairly modest overall, but we've had to adjust some of our previous estimates for beginning fund balances and take steps to then ensure that all of the funds remain positive. Go to the next slide. Yep. All right. So just for council's reference, this was the preliminary budget at the fund level in October. All funds were projected to end 2021 in the black, meaning they would have a positive fund balance unless they were designed to zero out. Some funds are set to take in exactly the same revenue and as they expend, mostly in bonds, bond payments, and those kinds of things. But all of them were designed or set up to end in the positive. We anticipated an overall revenues of about 38.8 or almost 38.9 million, and overall expenditures of about 32.8 million for a net ending fund balance of about $6 million across all funds. With that, we'll show the differences in December. These are the adjustments. And here again, an overall 2021 revenue picture of about 38.9 million. Overall expenditures across all funds of about 32.9 million, with an ending fund balance of approximately 6 million across all funds. Now within that, you'll have noted that a number of modest adjustments up and down in different areas occurred primarily in the general fund and some of the enterprise funds. This was the effect of having to adjust the beginning fund balances and then how that played out across the year. We'll go into a little deeper dive now with the general fund. General fund, we've broken this out in kind of the major revenue categories. Overall, in October, we were projecting revenues of about 13.3 million for the general fund. Well, a little less, almost 13.2, a little over 13.2. Our final projections are very close to the same. We're still expecting about 13.2 in 2021, but it is down a little bit. And some of that is from the reduced beginning fund balance. We had anticipated at one point a little higher ending fund balance in 2021, in 2020. That we've scaled back just a little bit as a result of the budget adjustments. We're seeing slightly higher revenues in areas like retail sales and use tax and utility taxes. We scaled back charges for goods and services in light of what we're seeing going on. The original projections when we were doing our budget building in September and October, frankly, the county had done a tremendous job in flattening the curve and reducing new transmissions of COVID-19. We had been advanced to phase 2. We were hoping to actually be able to see a higher level soon of activity in the jail, more contract spaces opening back up. But now that we've had a resurge, our projections for 2021 on revenues had been based pretty much on having almost back to a full jail during most of 21. We now recognize that's not likely, so we scaled back that revenue there about 20%, just so that we can account for the beginning of the year being a little flatter than we'd hoped. There's various adjustments like that, but those are the main ones. Net effect is it's about $5,000 less in 21 across all of these things. So it's pretty stable, but took a lot of work to get all of that there. Let's go on to expenditures. So in the general fund on the expenditure side, this is, as shown here, our largest portion of the general fund goes to law enforcement, the administration, investigation, patrol functions, our jail services, our police dispatch services, and then the criminal justice system, legal services, court. They account for just over half of the general fund. The original projected spending for general fund in 2021, we had put at about 13.2 million. We're shaving about 45,000 off of that as a net effect. And where this comes from is, again, a variety of adjustments internally. We know that if we aren't housing as many inmates, we won't be serving as many inmate meals, for example. So one area where we took a modest reduction was the jail had initially planned on a full year at full capacity for meals. We trimmed some of that since we know we aren't going to be serving that many meals. We aren't going to be providing as many inmate medications. We looked in other areas where we could kind of scale back and make sure that we stay in budget and within revenues and within the beginning fund balance. So all of that is reflected here. These assure, I think this is important, for council and for the public to understand. We're assuring that we're maintaining the same levels of service, same levels of staffing as are currently provided in 2020. No programs are being cut, no specific services are being reduced. And in fact, certain programs that we had to curtail this year because of COVID-19, like our recreation programs and the municipal pool, they're funded at a level in this budget so that they can operate again next year if the pandemic lets us reopen and do so. And so we work very hard to make sure that we aren't diminishing anything, even as we kind of tighten the belts here and there. Let's go on to the next slide. These are the main enterprise and restricted funds. There's very minor adjustments here. All of them remain stable and essentially in a good position. They'll end with positive fund balances. There wasn't very much that we had to change here in order to account for the third quarter budget amendments. We'll go on to expenditures. This again will be very familiar, just some minor adjustments here and there, but all of them remain with positive fund balances at the end of the projected 2021 year. And as shared previously, we worked to include and retain in these adjustments. We wanted to see if we could get there without having to sacrifice any of the budget enhancements that council had prioritized earlier. And so we were able to do that. We still have in this budget security cameras, the firefighter position, down payments on building up our equipment rental and replacement funds, a bridging strategy with leasing some police vehicles until we can get our ER&R fund built up. We've also got in here, well, those are the ER&R and the firefighter position is also in the, also pops up in the ambulance fund. It's split between them. We've also made some other adjustments. One thing I wanted to do is we recently reached tentative agreement on a collective bargaining agreement that will be coming and recommending to council's consideration on the 14th. This is with the Teamsters for the Clerical Union. We have set aside some reserve funds in each of the affected funds so that we would be able to cover those expenses in the compensation package if council adopts that bargaining agreement. That's been provided for in this adjusted budget, so it would not require a further amendment, and we know we can do it without going out of balance. Let's go on to the next slide. These projects, I think the Public Works Director and I went over these in one of the earlier presentations. These were enhancement requests out of the Water and Sewer Fund for infrastructure projects. There have been no changes here. These are the same set of projects that we presented to council here back in October or early November. And then just for council's reference, the next couple of slides, we are continuing to track. Let's go on. Yeah, the requests that were deferred from earlier discussions. These are here available for council's reference going forward here in the general fund, and then a few in some of the other funds. But we knew that council liked having those available, having those maintained, kept track of, so the council is aware of the things that we want to buy when our financial conditions permit us to. Jackie, go on to the, I think that's, yeah, there's those two, and then the last slide. So with this workshop, unless there's further adjustments from council or direction from council, we plan to bring this budget to council for adoption next week, next Monday. It will come in two parts. There's an enacting ordinance that enacts the budget itself, and then council takes action on what's called a classification and compensation ordinance that sets those figures for 2021 based off of the various collective bargaining agreements and so forth. So there'll be those two items coming before you next week. And then the budget, once adopted, takes effect on January 1st. And those are the next steps. That's our budget update.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And we'll go down a list for questions or comments. Deputy Mayor Stremler.
No questions or comments.
Councilor Henry.
Just thank you for your hard work, and we'll see it when it comes up on the final.
Thank you.
Councilor Restucci.
Same comments as my colleague. I want to thank the city manager and the staff for the work that they did on this budget. I really believe this is a great comprehensive budget that's going to get us through to the next year, given the uncertainty of COVID-19. So kudos to the staff, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Councilor Farmer.
None.
Councilor Broersma?
Yeah, I would like to echo my colleague's word as well. I am very impressed with the work that staff put in on this. I think you all have the right to feel quite proud of yourselves. This is a budget that I find fairly easy to understand, which for me is saying something. And so you guys did a great job. And even with the most recent budget amendment, you don't see a huge negative impact on our budget for this coming year. And I'm very pleased with that. So well done.
Thank you.
Councilor Hicks?
I have to mirror my colleagues' comments. You know, they did a great job, and thanks a lot.
Okay, Mr. Casey, one question. Do we anticipate another budget amendment before the year is out, or the last one was going to be enough to kind of make our budgets be in the black by the end of the year?
So the finance supervisor and I actually were just conferring on this today. We have put out a final call to the department heads to ensure that, you know, as they're looking ahead to what we're going to need basically for the last 3 weeks of the year, are there any areas where they see a potential risk of exceeding the expenditure authority? We've, you know, with Budget Amendment 2 that Finance Director Alba put together back in the spring, we began kind of paring back, you know, trying to keep a tight control of things. Budget Amendment 3 continued that. So we know we've kind of ratcheted down pretty tight on the department heads this year to keep 2020 as lean as possible. That said, budget amendment, the third quarter budget amendment really was focusing on absorbing and integrating all of the effects from the COVID-19 revenues and expenditures. So we did anticipate there might be a few. Right now, the preliminary look at our position reports indicate that any adjustments are probably at the line item level. We currently aren't seeing very many much need for something at the fund level, but finance supervisor will be finalizing that, and we do anticipate a little bit of cleanup, but nothing that should affect the overall fund balances significantly.
Okay, just making sure that we didn't have to have a special meeting towards the end of the year to make that budget. So if we could squeeze it into the 14th if needed, and thus in this case, it sounds like we may not have to.
We absolutely do not want to ruin your holidays with a special meeting.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And again, just like everyone said, you know, I want to thank staff. And obviously, I know it's been a challenging year, and having Elizabeth out, you know, for a little while, I'm sure put a little bit more pressure on other department employees. And obviously, thanks for all their, you know, sacrifices, hard work, and you for leading them in that direction. And again, like everyone said, it's a good budget. We've seen other budgets in the past, and this one and last year's like. I think we said a few different times, you made it easy on us to kind of look at those numbers and make sense of them versus digging into the weeds and just really getting bogged down on some of the details. This one really keeps us at our level and makes it easier for us to approve it, and at least from my perspective.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm very fortunate to have a really good team here, and you know, Elizabeth set a good foundation before she had to go out on leave, but the team have really picked up and built on that and done a great job with it.
Excellent. Glad to hear that. Okay, up next, Mr. City Manager, we have our upcoming council meetings.
All right. So, not to jolt you, but we're actually going to talk a little bit about January too. Coming up on the 14th, we do have, as we just mentioned, we anticipate a modest 2020 final budget cleanup amendment. Just kind of have that on there as a placeholder so that we can catch anything that might be getting a little askew as we go into the end of the year and ensure that every fund ends within budget and in the black. Next up, the way we've kind of got this sequenced, to kind of help set the stage for the budget adoption itself, we currently have an executive session as the second item on the agenda. I've got to get the clerk the RCW reference. This is related to labor relations, contract negotiations. The executive session is to brief council on the clerical CBA. Then anticipating possible action on the clerical collective bargaining agreement after we come out of the executive session. Next action would be the 2021 budget adoption, and then adoption of the 2021 classification and compensation schedule. And then I'm hoping by next week that we'll have a little bit clearer picture of what's happening at the state level with regard to the statewide level of declaration of emergency. There are a suite of executive orders, proclamations that are set to expire at midnight tonight. There's another statewide order, the kind of the new statewide restrictions on activities that kind of replace the phased reopening plan. That also will be coming up for its expiration is set for next week. So kind of watching all of those developments closely to be able to figure out what to recommend to council as a potential extension of your emergency declaration. And then, and your current one expires on December 31st. And that brings us into January, which, whoop, there we go. The clerk reminded me, typically council cancels the first workshop, the one right after New Year's Day. This one, it follows literally the Monday after New Year's Day. But that's a decision council can make in scheduling next week if you wish. But each year we do also have to schedule a special meeting at the very beginning of the year. And so we've got that tentatively set for January 11th. And this is the Sunnyside Industrial Development. I forget if it's a commission or committee.
Corporation.
SIDC. This is a joint entity between the city and the port. I believe Councillor Broersma is the current chair of the SIDC, and I believe Port Commissioner Skippelroot is the current vice chair. But it has to meet at least once annually and organize for the coming year. And so that usually occurs just before the first regular meeting of the city council. And then following that, we have some of the normal housekeeping business that council needs to do in order to get going for the year, boards and commissions, subcommittees, outside committees. And then, as Mr. Shuttleworth mentioned during his presentation, we're hoping to schedule a public hearing on that Yakima Valley Highway annexation clarification that we need to address from 1993. And that's about what we have. I think we need to find another, I think we're missing another January meeting in there, but we'll start filling out that pretty soon. And that's what we have coming up.
Okay, Mr. Getchell, well, thank you for that. And I don't see any more agenda items, so there being no further business to come before council, and without objection, I adjourn this meeting at 7:40 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Everyone. See you next week.
Good night.
At all.